Okay, it's only got 20 minutes. I'm gonna try to be as fast as I can on this. This is just trying to voice, like, kind of like get some stress off from Rwby Vol6, because as they delve more and more into the lore, the build up, the different abilities, either the series is starting to contradict itself, almost like in certain scenes, hypocrisy. It's hypocriting against itself, and I'm going to discuss a few of the things. One of the most recent things, and I'm going to put a spoiler warning on this because this does concern to probably our first members who have seen Rwby Rewind and seen the small clip that's appeared, is young Maria being the silver-eyed warrior. And I have a huge problem with this after the last episode on the Brunswick farm where Ruby's flashing her eyes all over the place like a fucking retard. You see, the series Rwby just started off simply as kind of like a high school action animation. That's basically what it was. And the thing that really brought everyone into the show wasn't the lore, it wasn't high school, it was the friggin' action. If Monty hadn't been there for the first 2 years, no one would be watching this friggin' show. No one would give two fucks about it. It was his animation that drew people in. I went from watching his Dead Fantasy series to friggin' watching Rwby. That's simply how it was done. And, enough aside, the action quality is getting better in Volume 6. That's one of the upsides to it. The people they got working in their animation department are doing a great job. It's not the same, but with a different graphics engine. You take what you can get. My problem is, the biggest villain overall in the show, the most common villain that the people will run into is the Grimm. The Grimm were built up to be this big threat, and the Grimm are not a threat. Not even when you get boss Grimm like the Knuckleweave, or you never feel threatened. One reason, the four main characters, they got the strongest plot armor. Nothing's gonna ever happen to them. And you're probably thinking, oh, Volume 3, Adam cut Yang's hand off and he stabbed Blake. And I'm like, but you knew they weren't gonna die. It's impossible. All four characters are gonna survive to the end of the friggin' series. So whether Yang loses another arm, it doesn't matter. She gets another fucking robot arm. Like, if Rwby 3.0 that you see on Twitter that the other guy's making his reboot version art design of, Rwby gets her legs chopped off. She gets robot legs. You're in a world where cybernetics can replace basically fucking anything at this point. Rwby could get blown to pieces and they could store her soul in a friggin' orb and install it in a robot body and we could have Rwby back. I mean, the potential for bullshit is at a whole new level in this show, because they just keep coming up with new ways to make the show go forward rather than put restrictions on the show. The show is not known for having restrictions. The writers don't like restricting themselves by putting rules into place. That's why they don't like, they mention this in commentary, they don't like mentioning dates and times, because the people at home with brains actually start to realise that timing and shit doesn't match up, and the writers aren't good at bloody following their own rules. And the issue with the Silver Eyes is the Grimm are not a threat anymore. You got Silver Eyes, you're basically the Terminator. You just walk around, flash beam, 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 and the things just fucking die instantly. So what this does in turn is, from what we know, we're getting a Maria flashback in the next episode, and I don't think we need it. I think it's waste of animation. It's pointless. We're probably going to see maybe a 5-minute... Nah, I doubt even that. Their animation's already limited. Like, when we see Cinderverse fucking thing, that lasted maybe 2 minutes. So we'll see a fight scene with Maria and some fucking Grimm where she's using her fucking weapons because they gotta show us what weapons she used. They need to show us what she looked like when she was young and before she turned into a midget. And the whole time, like, I've just seen the clip of this scene, which is like 50 seconds, and the first thought that's popped into my head is, why the fuck is she fighting the Nevermore? Like, what point is there of her attacking the Nevermore with her weapon, dancing all over the fucking place, and then killing it, when legit she could have just flashed her fucking eyes at it and the scene would be over? It's pointless. It's Silver Eyes takes away the aspect of fighting. There's no point in fighting the Grimm if you have Silver Eyes. It's like, if Ruby knew for a fact that her only enemy in the future was going to be Grimm, she technically doesn't need Crescent Rose anymore. Just walk around flashing your fucking eyes at people and they're going to die. So, and I don't, and that, like, there's no way any logical person could come up with an actual excuse. Oh, we want to see her fighting. Yeah, but it's pointless. It's pointless. It's like telling someone to go do something. Like, imagine if someone... I live in Sydney, Australia, right? And Perth, Australia, is on the other side of the continent. And you're telling someone, walk to Perth. It will be a challenge. And you're like, why don't you just catch a fucking plane? The plane's right there. You'll probably spend just as much money walking there, buying fucking supplies. Might as well just catch a fucking plane. You're an idiot. So, yeah, that I don't get. One scene, because I was watching Vexed Viewer's video recently, I actually got it up here, and because I don't have a computer, I can't do editing right now. I'm gonna direct it to this. Because when I watched this video, this is what popped out at me. This friggin' actually really triggered me. So, if you can see it there, I'm going to play the scene, if I can get it.
That's right. I want you to understand why Cinder must be left to toil in her isolation until she redeems herself.
Sir?
That is the biggest hypocrite in the whole fucking show right there. Or, like, this was the funny thing that happened in episode 3. We learned their whole fucking backstory. It's the biggest episode, and it's the biggest bullshit fucking episode. It's one of the worst friggin' backstories they could come up with for these characters. Because it's a literal fucking nightmare. Take this into consideration, right? She's there telling fucking thingy, oh, we gotta leave Cinder in isolation. We need her to redeem herself. And I'm like, bitch, this whole show, thanks to episode 3 of Volume 6, this whole show is based around you getting your head around the cycle of life and death. As soon as Salem comes to terms with the cycle of life and death, this show ends. Because she loses her curse and she goes to the fucking afterlife. It's that simple. That's the fuck up that this season made, because that's the premise of Salem's character. She's not cursed, she's not supposed to be immortal. As soon as she figures out that life ends, people die, that's the cycle of life, her curse is over and she dies. It was made perfectly fucking clear. And this is where stupidity comes into it, because the whole premise behind her not accepting life and death was her love for Ozpin, basically, right? So during that part of the story, it makes sense that she wouldn't accept life and death. And then she gets cursed, and she becomes an asshole. And Ozma comes back, and they fall in love. And in all honesty, the way they were writing it, that should have been the end of the fucking story. It should have been a happily ever after. Because the moment they said, oh, and then it turns bad, that's where the writers fucked up. Because the whole premise for her not accepting life and death was Ozma. And the moment they started fighting, the moment she killed Ozma, she's like, I'm gonna kill your fucking ass. Oh, well, doesn't that involve life and death? Killing your boyfriend? Killing your children? It's like, and this is, and what we're watching, present day Ruby, this is taking place thousands of years later, apparently. They've stated thousands, so it can be anywhere to 2,000 years plus it's taking part. And you're telling me, in that time of isolation and redemption, in over 2,000 fucking years of watching people live and die, going through different fucking henchmen over and over again, feeling lonely, fighting against your love for over 2,000 fucking years, this bitch hasn't got one concept of life and death in her head? It's like, what? It's like, and this furthers to the point, to the theories that have popped up recently, because she's grim, or half grim. The end of the story is basically Ruby is gonna flash her fucking eyes like a flashlight right in Salem's face, and it'll either kill her, which makes no sense. I don't get that. Or it's gonna get rid of her grim side and she's gonna turn back to human, but she'll still be immortal. And, you know, if the destruction leaves her body, she won't be a bitch anymore, except she was a bitch when she was human, so it doesn't make sense. So she goes back to being human, but she's still a bitch, so... Oh... The problem is, if you watched people like Vex, if you've seen Fat Man Falling, Raymond, and all that, it's like... Any person who's watched anime, and I've watched a ton of anime, I own a lot of anime, anyone that's read books, this is only one of my books. I got a few, I read a lot. So anyone should be able to come up with a better idea than that. It's like, I'm really, that's what I'm worried about the future of this show. It's like, the Silver Eyes kind of got... Everything the writers tell us is... And they're still doing it till this day. Something came out on Twitter earlier this week, and I kind of like, I responded to it, because he said something about the current episode with apathy and everything was an idea that they had. This was Miles Luna saying, we had this before Volume 1. We had this idea since the beginning when the friggin' trailers come out. And I'm like, if you go back to Volume 1, with the budget you guys had and the story you told, and these days people look back at Volume 1 and 2 and they're laughing their ass off. They're like, oh, they're pieces of shit. We should be thankful we're getting Volume 5 and 6 with this much info. And I'm like, well, if you're going to put down Volume 1 and say, well, it was a piece of shit, it was basically just fighting for the sake of fighting, it was pretty pointless, I really doubt they have some fucking book or some freaking computer file on their computer that, you know, Miles, Carey, and bloody Monty sat down and they wrote some fucking 1,000 page of all this bloody info about what they're gonna do in the... I really doubt that information somewhere. Like, the idea for apathy, that's possible. You probably could... You could have come up with an idea for a lot of Grimm and, you know, executed the idea. The idea for the drunk encounter between Crow and Ruby, I don't think that was created before Volume 1. Because between Volumes 1 to 3, 4 would be pushing your luck, because he does get a bit serious there. But 1 and 3, his drinking's a joke. It's like, he's literally an alcoholic that's always drunk. Winter says it. Glenda says it. He's always fucking drunk. And I actually understood why he might be drunk. I had the theory that being intoxicated, which does affect your mind and your inner being, might affect the soul, hence aura and semblance, and him being drunk might actually affect his semblance. So it's like, if he's sober, it's more likely that his semblance of bad luck is happening more often. So if he's drunk, his bad luck happens less often. That was an idea I came up with. I thought it was a friggin' smart idea. It explains why he's an alcoholic. And yeah, for the first 3 volumes, it's like it's a joke. No one takes his alcohol consumption seriously. Everyone's laughing their ass off, and then all of a sudden, we get to volume 6, and it's like, oh, you can't be drinking, Uncle Crow. Shit's gone to shit, and you're depressed. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure this isn't the first time he's been drinking while depressed. And I'm like, given the amount of alcohol he consumes, I don't think it's gonna affect him in that bad way. You're giving off the vibe that he might become suicidal, or maybe he becomes aggressive and attacks people when he's drunk, but I don't get that feeling. He just seems like the type of a typical guy. Like, I know this might come across as a bit sexist, but like, when men and women get to arguments, especially like couples or marriages or even family in general, if you got like a father and a daughter or something, and this is most in general from a man's point of view, it's like when we get pissed off, we're not the best at sorting things out with other people. This is something I suffer from as well. It's like most of the time that I've been pissed off growing up, I tend to burden it. I just drop it down. I'm like, just concentrate, get through it, and that has led to me being depressed at certain points in my life, because I'm also an older brother. So when bad stuff's happened in the family, whether my parents have been divorced, when my mum passed away, it's like I'm the older brother, so I've burdened everything. I take the burden, make sure my sister's alright, make sure the family's alright. So I don't share emotions well. And I kind of get that feeling from Crow that he's the same type of person. It's like, he doesn't want to talk to Ruby, he doesn't want to talk to Yang, he's the one that's there, he's had to replace Summer and everything. So I kind of get where he's coming from. I'm not an alcoholic though, I don't drink anymore. I used to drink when I was younger. But yeah, I kind of get that. That's a male standpoint. We don't share emotions well. We tend to, and that's one of the difference between men and women in general. I think men don't rely on communication that much. So it's like, if we're pissed off, if we're depressed, and a woman comes up to us, like in Ruby's case, in the latest volume, comes up to him and he's like, oh, let's talk about it, we're most likely to push away, just get the fuck away from us, we'll deal with it in our own way. And so yeah, I've never been the biggest fan of Ruby Rose as a character anyway, and like, people are like, oh, she's getting development now, and I'm like, this isn't the development that I wanted to see in this bitch. She's basically become a flashlight. Like, and we're only halfway through the friggin' volume. I don't know where it can go. I want someone to die. And in all honesty, I wasn't happy with the Brunswick farm. I thought that, like, even from a stand-up point of view, because I got to end this video, I'm running out of storage on my phone. Even this came down to Murder Birds. Murder Birds said the same thing. He came up with the whole theory, Roman Torchwick and Neo on the farm based on the picture. Then there's the intro sequence where we're seeing all these fucking, like, the wavy hand type thing fucking come out of everywhere and drag Crow down, but that was just supposedly Crow getting drunk and getting into depression, so, which makes no sense, because it goes against him being a drunk in general, and we never got the fucking scary ass grim, we got fucking empathy, and for some reason, I really don't understand why people were pissing their pants with empathy. Because as I said in the beginning of the video, the Grimm are not a threat in this show. Like, and this is my biggest issue I want to leave you with, like, you guys can comment when I post this, but, like, in this show, there is no threat to me. We're literally watching a show with no villains in it, because the Grimm are not a threat. They're never going to accomplish anything. They're cannon fodder. The White Fang are not a threat. They're cannon fodder. Tyrion's had his ass kicked. He's not a threat. Hazel's got his ass kicked. He's not a threat. Emerald and Mercury got their ass kicked. They're not a threat. The Maidens, I don't fucking know what they're gonna do. They just seem to show up whenever we need to open a vault, and then they fuck off again. So, And Salem, she's shit. So it's like they need to kill someone off. Comment below. Let me know your thoughts.